What the fuck happened?
So, Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon Part 2 just released, and it's getting blasted by the majority of people. His movies have always been pretty divisive, but this is really the first time he's taken a lot of heat from casual viewers and his own fans, and it's not hard to see why. Now, I've made a video talking about Rebel Moon Part 2 already, but after sitting on these movies and taking some time to think about it, I decided to talk about it a bit more. Because I made that video not long after I saw the film. I'm talking like less than 12 hours. After a few days of just really letting it marinate, I admit that I was too nice in that video. I'm still disappointed and felt that it was a pretty hollow and lackluster experience, but the more I think about it, the less I enjoyed the movie. And it just sucks seeing someone you like put out something you don't enjoy. And that's the situation that I'm in. I guess I just didn't really want to admit it. So this is kind of a continuation of that video, but I'm not going to be discussing the movies as much as I'm going to discuss the man behind them, Zack Snyder. And basically just voice where I think things are going wrong with these movies and the issues that are occurring. Not really the stuff that's on screen, but the stuff in production, which result in the many issues that we see on screen in general. And this isn't just about Rebel Moon Part 1 and 2. This goes for Army of the Dead as well, though to a lesser degree. But a lot of what I'm going to be talking about does apply to that movie as well. Now, this was a topic that my buddy Fox and I discussed recently in a video that will be coming out soon. So I'm basically going to be saying a lot of things that we talked about in that video. Now, of course, I want to start by saying that I'm a big fan of Snyder and yada yada yada. You know the deal. I followed the guy for years and defended several of his movies. So what I'm about to say doesn't come from a place of hate. It comes from a place of frustration and disappointment. And if what I'm about to say doesn't make me a true fan, then so be it. Now, there are a couple of main issues that cause just big problems with these movies. And it all started when Snyder went to Netflix back in 2020. So around 2020 or so, Snyder started working with Netflix to make Army of the Dead. And this was at the height of the release of Snyder Cut movement. His version of Justice League was getting released, and he was making headlines and just getting a lot of attention. Netflix, seeing this, decided to capitalize and let Snyder just do his own thing over there. The first of these projects was Army of the Dead. It was a somewhat decent movie that had some interesting ideas, but wasn't really that great. But that didn't matter, because it did some really good numbers. A lot of people saw this movie, not only because of the attention that the Snyder Cut got, but also because Snyder himself has a very loyal fan base. So immediately after Army of the Dead, they greenlit his next project, Rebel Moon. And this is when we get into the first of the biggest issues. Zack has too much power. After seeing the numbers that Army of the Dead brought in, and just how many people follow and support Snyder, I think Netflix were kind of like, fuck it, here's a bunch of money, go crazy with your next project. And that's pretty much what he did. Now, it may sound like I'm advocating for studio mandates or interference, but that's not the case. What I think the problem really is that Snyder himself is a great idea and concept guy. He puts a lot of thought into the world and adds a bunch of detail that probably gets overlooked. But after seeing him more involved in the writing process in these last 3 movies, I think the problem is clear. He's not the best writer and he needs better ones. Ones to funnel his ideas and vision and bounce ideas off of to make the best version of his story. And more importantly, he needs them to tell him, no, that won't work, let's try this instead. You can see this clear as day in his last 3 movies. They all have a lot of interesting ideas and concepts and some cool world building details, but a big problem is, instead of focusing on 1 or 2 of those good ideas, he tries to touch on and include as much as he can. This was even evident in Army of the Dead. It's a zombie movie, but it's also a heist movie. It also hints at aliens. There's these android zombie things, possibly for the government. There's even this like time travel theory, and at the heart of it all is a story of a father and a daughter. Just so much going on. In Rebel Moon's case, it's pretty similar, but instead it's with the world building and characters. It tries to include and add so much, but it can't balance it all, and leaves several parts just underdeveloped, mostly the characters. Basically, he wants to do everything instead of just sticking to like 2, maybe 3 really good ideas. And it's clear from the writers that he's working with that no one is really challenging him on anything. He's had the same team of writers for these last 3 movies, and their writing credentials before working with Snyder were either very lacking or non-existent. It's obvious they aren't as skilled as the writers Snyder's worked with in the past. And now for years, people have said that Snyder is a great idea guy, but he needs better writers to funnel his ideas to the page. And for a while, I didn't buy that. But after these 3 movies, it seems that unfortunately that is the case. Now, Snyder is very involved in the writing process, he always has been, but he needs others to actually put the ink to the page and more importantly, change and challenge his ideas and see what can work or what can be done in a better way, what they could pull back on and what they could include. These last 3 movies have shown Snyder just fully unrestrained and just going all out. And in a way, you kind of respect it because he was never really given that opportunity. But unfortunately, the final product is just mid at best. And I feel like Snyder is given so much power because of the fandom he has. Netflix clearly isn't stepping in, and he's surrounded himself with so many yes men who clearly don't push back on his ideas. I guess you can call these last 3 movies or last 3 years the creative freedom era or the full Snyder era, because it's definitely without a doubt 100% him. But it comes at the cost of the movie just trying to do so much and not getting any pushback from his peers, which results in a pretty very lackluster product. And it's really a shame because if you watch the behind the scenes footage and you hear the actors and the producers and the writers and Snyder himself talk about Rebel Moon, it's clear they're very passionate about it. They put a lot of thought into it, and it all seems very interesting. Snyder himself goes into like insane detail about the lore and mythology for a bunch of like small little things. And it all just sounds fascinating, but when you watch the movie, it's just not there because it's trying to do just several other things as well, which it all comes back to narrowing your focus to just a few really good things instead of trying to include everything at once, as well as collaborating with others who are able to push back against your ideas, but also offer some new suggestions. And so while I'm at it, I'll talk a little bit about this weird deal with Netflix. I've said it before and I'm saying it again. Doing PG-13 2-hour versions of these movies when they're meant to be 3 hours long and rated R doesn't make sense, and no one can convince me otherwise. It's not getting released in theaters. All of Netflix's top movies and shows are TV-14 or TVMA, and the runtime isn't a problem because, again, it's not going in theaters. I guarantee the reason they did this is because they want their own Snyder Cut thing so they can market the movie a second time. But my thing is, if they greenlit the longer versions, then just release that instead of putting out an inferior product. Now, I will say, I think Part 1 will benefit from a longer runtime because it'll give us more time with the characters and the world. But I don't think a longer runtime will help Part 2 because that movie was stretching things thin as hell already. So a longer runtime probably won't help that, and more than likely it will feel more like a drag. I mean, if anything, this probably should have been like a 6 or 7 episode series, which considering the length of these movies, I'm really surprised they didn't do. And apparently Snyder wants to do 6 of these movies. So he clearly wants this to be the next big franchise. But after these 2 outings, I don't think it will be without some serious reevaluation on 1, how it's released, and 2, where they focus the story and writing, as well as who he's collaborating with. It's like my buddy Fox said, after these 3 movies of having complete creative freedom, I hope he's gotten it out of his system and he's able to learn from this experience. And hopefully he's able to take a look back and reevaluate everything and see what went wrong, what worked, what didn't, and how he can apply it to his next project. I mean, in interviews and stuff like that, he seems like a pretty down-to-earth, really chill dude, so I don't think he's so full of himself that he can't see the issues, especially now that it's all said and done. As far as I know, he's not working on another project, so he can take some time to actually reevaluate things, especially with how much negative attention Rebel Moon Part 2 is getting, even from his own following. As a fan of Snyder, this video sucks to make, but I think it's time to just call it how it is. After 3 movies and seeing what he can put out when he has complete creative control, I think it's time for him to really reevaluate how he goes about things and starts collaborating with some better producers and writers who can help make the best version of his idea. Because when looking back, some of his best work came when he had a very solid script, as well as working with some very good producers and writers. I think if given the right material, he could easily make a comeback, but he's definitely going to have to learn to show some restraint. These last 3 movies definitely aren't his strongest, and I would easily rank like towards the bottom of the list. Though not absolutely terrible, no, but completely underwhelming, overstuffed, and pretty lackluster. Okay, I'm done with the topic now. Moving on. Next video will be about 300.
Mr. Warmongering latent homosexual.
Mr. Warmongering latent homosexual.
I'ma give me some of that plankton penis tomorrow. Sexy ass nigga. Look at you looking all cute. Wearing my shit. Sponge boy me Bob. With Mr. Plankton up here, a nice juicy Krabby Patty with a special Krabby sauce.